not every human has the same lessons to work on. I have been open on the podcast that I believe in souls, I believe in reincarnation. And so when I think about it that way, every soul comes into a certain incarnation for an experience. And so certain things will come easy to us, right? There's certain people that never struggle with health, and there's people that are constantly struggling with health. All right, YouTube friends, Ketamine Connections, I'm Anna Krishdal. This is a short clip to remind you that the video you're about to see is not made for YouTube. It is simply a video recording of me recording the Ketamine Connections podcast that you can find on Spotify, you can find on iTunes, you can find on Amazon. Honestly, pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, Ketamine Connections is there. And we want to get it on YouTube because we have all of this amazing video. Some of you are really enjoying watching me record this. So that is what this video is. It's not designed for YouTube. And I hope you enjoy. And please let me know below in the show notes if you're liking this format, because we want to do the things that you like, the things that help you and really serve you, because this is really for you. Enjoy. Why is it that psychedelics are what's healing people when other things don't quite get people to where they want to go? What is it about the psychedelic that is getting people to their desired result? I know that is the question that I was asking 7 years ago, and this is an anniversary episode to that collision that I had. Ketamine Connections, welcome back. My name is Anna, and this is an anniversary episode in honor of my personal transformation with psychedelics that has led me to everything that I do. This episode is not about that transformation. It's not the detailed account of what happened. I actually recorded that last year, right around the same time. That episode is called I Did Not Expect This After My First Psychedelic Journey. It is episode number 15 of the show. And if you want to hear the full story, the lead up to what got me to that transformation, what I was thinking going into it, what I was expecting going into it, what I got out of it, go back and listen to episode 15 because it's all in there. I talk pretty honestly about how I went into that ceremony feeling really like spiritually arrogant and spiritually confident and so certain I knew what was about to happen. I had about 15 years of yoga under my belt at that time studying. I was teaching for a while at that time too. I had spent a few years as a daily meditator, 2 years as a daily meditator. I had all of this hypnotherapy experience. I was a practicing hypnotherapist at the time. I really knew what was about to happen. I thought I set a great intention. All of these things that were absolutely not true and led to a lot of turmoil in the aftermath of that weekend. I talk about in the episode as well how the medicine showed me my addictive patterns, the things that I was addicted to, and how I was so arrogant and so ignorant about addiction that I quit all of my addictions, all of my vices all at once, which I never recommend. And that set me down the path of understanding that addiction is a lid, it's covering a bunch of stuff. That stuff starts to come out. I talk about that in that episode number 15, if you're interested in hearing more about that story. I talk about how the first night was one way, the second night was one of the hardest nights of my life, how I went to war, how I just wasn't willing to see what I had seen. And the thing that I don't talk about as much in that episode that I'm going to get into a bit more in this episode is how hard it was after the ceremony, how I didn't have anyone to talk to, even though I had this huge wellness network full of coaches, therapists, yoga instructors, somatic healers, Reiki practitioners, like all of these people. Nobody really knew what I had been through. Nobody was versed in psychedelics, which is honestly still true to this day. And it left me really lonely, not really knowing where to find the answers that I was seeking, not to have anyone help me make sense of, hey, I was trying to make these changes for 2 years of recreating my life, recreating my identity. And in one weekend, it was just everything happened all at once. I thought I was ready. Again, I was spiritually arrogant and just like thought I knew all the things. And then the ceremony or the aftermath in the ceremony really showed me that I didn't really know as much as I thought. I went on a multiple year journey to plug in those missing pieces to figure out, what was it that happened that weekend? What happened to me? What happened to my mind? Why were all those changes all of a sudden so simple and easy? And while that first episode, again, episode number 15, talks about the before math and it talks about the ceremony, it talks a little bit about the after. I want to make this episode an anniversary episode that bridges some of the biggest lessons that I've learned in those 7 years. November 12th, 2018 is the date that I started the dieta to go into that ceremony. It's the day, my last day of alcohol. So I credit that day as the anniversary of my transformation. I think it's so cool that this year, 7 years later, and I'll talk about the significance of 7 years in later on in the show, is 7 years later. It is the same day. This episode releases on November 12th. So I'm super excited about that as well. So let's get into some of the lessons that I've so humbly learned in the past 7 years, from my own journey, from going on multiple years of journeying, studying with other people to understand the subconscious mind better, to understand psychedelics better, to understand trauma better. I mean, I have not stopped learning about that one weekend for the past 7 years. And that's, I think, the first thing that I want to say that I've learned is that there is no destination. I really thought there was. I thought, okay, I'm going to go into this ceremony and I'm going to come out with a different life. And it seems so obvious now to kind of break it down. Again, I have 4 years of working with people in ketamine coaching. So I'm used to breaking this question down a lot. And the question is different how, right? I walked in and I said, I want a different life. And I didn't do any sort of preparation to really conceptualize on any level, visually, logistically, my thoughts. Like was not prepared for what a different life meant. My thought was that I was going to get plucked out of one reality into a different one. And while that was somewhat true, it's the transition, the bridge that I had to cross in order to get from one life to the other. There was no plucking, there was no transportation. That is not real. There is no silver magic bullet. I had to do the work and acknowledge that all of this happens in cycles and it happens in waves and it happens in different parts, and we're never given more than we're prepared for. So the lessons that I'm learning now, or the unfoldings that are happening now, are different than what was happening then, because I wasn't at the same level of ready then than I am now. I want to give the metaphor of the ship, because actually that was funny. That was actually part of my intention. Was I wanted to break free from the shore I was at and sail into a bright new future. I'm pretty sure that was verbatim my intention, which was too broad. I would never let anyone go into any ceremony with that intention, knowing what I know now. But let's talk about the ship. So okay, if I'm going on a sail journey, I'm going on a ship journey. Obviously, I'm not a sailor. I am preparing my boat and I'm getting really excited, and there's anticipation. So there's that part, the anticipation of what is the adventure going to bring? What am I going to see? Who am I going to meet? What am I going to taste? All of the different elements that I love about travel and adventuring. Now, when I'm about to break off from the shore and kind of pull my rope into the boat, there is inevitably going to be some sort of trepidation, nervous energy, also excitement, and just this acknowledgement that I don't know what's about to happen. Now, as the ship pulls away, but I could still see the shore, there is a level of safety of, oh, I can go back to what is known, to what is familiar, and what is comfortable. Once I'm far enough away from the shore, then I'm in what might be uncharted territory. For me, it was uncharted territory. all of the vices that I broke away from, all of the things that made up my identity that I broke away from, I was in uncharted waters. I wasn't sure how to navigate those waters. And once you're there, you figure it out. You get somewhere, you don't know where you are. Maybe your phone's dead. I don't know. I started traveling before smartphones. So there are ways of figuring these things out. And so that is part of the journey as well, is knowing that it is an entire path. And so if I'm, for example, sailing, using the same metaphor, okay, I'm out in uncharted territories, and then I see, land ho, and I decide to go visit whatever that land is. Okay, I can stay there and I can build a whole new life there if that's, interesting to me and something I want to do, but I can also keep going. And I think that's part of what's been my experience over the past 7 years. There are some destinations, but eventually I push away from those shores and I keep going. It's happening in cycles, it's happening in patterns repeating, it's happening in so many different elements that are not just, oh, I was 3 years old and now I'm 4 years old. It's not so linear. And this brings in a concept that I've only learned through, yeah, all of the learning that I've done, all of the inquiry and seeking that I did after that ceremony in 2018, and also from years of working with clients. And that is this concept of a spiral staircase. So I used to think that healing or whatever journey of change, transformation, new life that I was on, I was going to go from point A to point B. Now, I've already explained to you that yes, you can go from point A to point B, and then maybe there's a point C, D, fill in the blank. And what I've learned is that it's not linear. What it's more like is that you're walking up a spiral staircase and you're going to encounter the same themes, the same vantage point, the same view multiple times. So, for example, one of the lessons that I know has been a part of my journey is the lesson of forgiveness. Now, when I started, whatever the starting point was, the first time I encountered that as something that I needed to learn, then I was standing at one vantage point and approaching it from that view. Now, forgiveness is a lesson that I have encountered multiple times and will continue to encounter. And now, because I've encountered it so much, because I've done so much work with forgiveness, I am standing at a different vantage point. I'm not going to say that it's higher or lower because I don't believe it's linear and I don't want to be spiritually arrogant. I've learned that lesson enough times, but I know I'm from a different vantage point where certain levels of forgiveness are easier because I've already experienced them, and other forms of forgiveness are harder or more challenging or take more effort, take more whatever, fill in the blank, because I haven't experienced it yet. I'm looking at it, I'm experiencing it. I'm at a different level, and a phrase that I enjoy, take with it what you will, new level, new devil. So there's certain, gremlins, demons, challenges that I've overcome. And so they're easier. But when I get to a new level, there's a whole new challenge and it has the same theme. Now, there's something that I've heard that I personally resonates as truth to me. I wish I remember where I heard it. It was so long ago. And like I said, I'm nonstop studying. There's a lesson that I heard that not every human has the same lessons to work on. I have been open on the podcast that I believe in souls. I believe in reincarnation. And so when I think about it that way, every soul comes into a certain incarnation for an experience. And so certain things will come easy to us, right? There's certain people that never struggle with health, and there's people that are constantly struggling with health. There's people that never struggle with financial abundance, and certain people that always struggle with it. Yes, there are certain systemic constructs that create the reality that we live in. I'm not discounting that. And it would be overwhelming and absurd if we had to learn every single possible human lesson. It is just a fact that certain things come easier to some people and not to others. And so those things that come easy to you are not your lessons in this lifetime. And the things that are more challenging are the lessons. And there's a saying that I love. If you know nothing else about me, know that I live by one liners. I've picked up so many along the way. I actually talked about this last week in the episode about how to change your mind, of how I used to have different Pinterest quotes plastered all over. And that's where I get a lot of my one liners. And one that is relevant to this point is that as long as there is breath, there is work to be done. And I truly believe that. And again, if the work is never done, if there's no final destination, if it really is this trope about it being the journey, then it encourages me to live in those cycles. It encourages me to take a break every so often and admire the view that is my current reality, because I have worked to get to every single step of my reality, and I want to enjoy it before I move on to the next, even though, again, I'm always moving, things are always changing. It's change is the only constant. And so with that, I will say that one thing that hasn't changed over the past, I don't know, probably 3 to 4 years, is that this anniversary kind of lost its luster after year 3, when it became obvious to me that I was not going back to alcohol. The first year felt like a miracle. The second year genuinely confused me. I didn't think I could do a year, let alone 2. By year 3, I realized that not drinking alcohol was my identity, and I hadn't yet unpacked everything else, not all of it anyways. And so the past few years, I've been kind of like, okay, it's an anniversary. I'm going to celebrate it because I celebrate all of my achievements, big and small. And it's not super exciting until I got to this year and I realized that all of our cells turn over in 7 years. So if you don't know, all of our organs, our skin has a rate of cellular turnover. And within a 7-year cycle, all of the cells in the body have turned over. So that means that none of the cells in my body right now know alcohol. My liver cells have turned over. My blood cells, all of the cells have turned over. And I think that's so freaking cool that I went from a reality where I couldn't imagine, or I didn't know how to imagine, 45, 60 days without alcohol, to now none of my cells know alcohol. It is a memory in my brain. And that is super cool. I think that's really cool. So those are my lessons and my takeaways from the past 7 years of living into this new reality, of living the integration, and also of seeking so many answers, and now having enough that I offer them in my coaching and in the ketamine preparation protocol as well. Everything that I wish I knew going into that weekend, for sure. And yeah, that weekend really cracked me open. So if you're still with me in this episode, I want to reward you with a fun story. I think it's fun. So in that first ceremony 7 years ago, 2018, one of the shaman that was there told me I had to open my heart. Now, I will say that that was a phrase that I was getting so often. It was a message I was receiving from so many random sources in my life that I thought it was as typical as like, good morning or how are you? It was just kind of like, I entered into this world where everybody tells you to open your heart. Okay. And still, when the shaman said it at the end of that weekend, he said, you have to open your heart. My initial response is, who the fuck are you? And you don't fucking know me, because, well, that's who I was at the time. And also, like, isn't that exactly what someone with a closed heart would say? It didn't occur to me at the time. Now it feels really obvious. I mentioned in this episode that forgiveness is a lesson that I learn repeatedly, honestly, probably on a daily basis in small ways, and pretty often in bigger ways. And so I put that message aside. Again, I was getting it on repeat. I was just kind of put it on the shelf of things that I don't know what to do with, and went about my life. I talk about it more in episode 15, how my life changed over those next 6 months after that weekend, and how I then went back for more ceremony. And it was with the same shaman that I sat with in 2018. Now it's 2019. I come back into ceremony, and I am talking to that same shaman. And the first thing he says to me, he says, Eres todo corazón, which you're all heart. And I got really excited. I was like, oh my God, I did it. I'm all heart. And I was filled up with excitement. And then I looked down and I was wearing a sweater that had hearts all over it. And gosh, when you're in this work enough, you really do develop a sense of humor. If you look at any of the sages, if you look at any of the enlightened examples that we have, they have a sense of humor. They are constantly laughing. So that was his joke. I was able to laugh at it at that point too. And between the message of opening my heart, oof, I'm getting emotional. And the lesson of forgiveness, that is something that is a recurring theme for me is my heart getting cracked open. And I know that I reach a new threshold in my evolution, in my integration, in my ascension, honestly, when I feel my heart crack open. It is a humbling feeling. It comes with a lot of tears. I talked about that in episode, I think it was 65 with Troy Leonard of Valor Minds, where I talk about how I spent years crying as all of this was unfolding. Again, I didn't have anyone that could guide me and help me through this, which is why I want to serve as that guide for others, as why I do the work that I do to help people feel less alone, to normalize these experiences that are still not quite understood and not ubiquitous and also layered. These experiences are, yeah, they're very layered from the outer world into the inner world down to the karmic seed of your life purpose. So that's why I run this show. It's why I have the ketamine preparation protocol. It's why I run the class about how to use ketamine to transform your subconscious mind. It's why I love talking to you guys that are in this process. So keep the emails and the outreach coming. And that is my anniversary episode of 7 years alcohol free, other vices free, abandoning all my addictions, all my vices all at once, everything unfolded all at once. And it's been a ride. It's been such a roller coaster of life, emotion, unfolding experiences. And I would not change a thing. So if you're considering ketamine or considering going on a psychedelic exploration, let this serve as inspiration that if it's calling you, you're ready for it. If it's calling you for a reason. And if you need someone to talk to make sense of the calling or whatever unfolds, please reach out and know that I am here to help. And that is through one-on-one coaching, through the ketamine preparation protocol, through the new free class that I've just recently started. And I hope to see you in any one of those spaces. I love seeing your faces in the little Zoom rooms and all the ways that we get to connect, whether it's Zoom room, email. Keep it coming. I love seeing this community grow. So that is all that I have for you today. Definitely stay curious, stay humble is my addition to this episode. And I'll see you next time on Ketamine Connections. Bye. Hey, friends. Thank you so much for joining me today on Ketamine Connections. I hope that this episode inspired you. I hope that it uplifted you. And I hope it just expanded your mind in some way with some perspective shift. We have been running this show for over a year now, which is incredible. And after more than 50 episodes, we have so many different resources to offer you. And we took all of those resources, we put it into one place called the Ketamine Starter Portal. Check that out in the show notes. Everything you need is there. All of our guides, anything that we've talked about on the show is in that portal. And it's also the best way to get in contact with me since we are not allowed to talk about psychedelics on social media. Being on the email list is the best way to get updates, to get all of the information that you need, and to stay in touch. So I really hope to see you in there.